Okay, we're live streaming.
Okay, well, call the meeting to order. Do a roll call. Oh, excuse me. Okay. I'll get rid of the continue button. The roll, Mr. Schuler.
Here.
Mr. Stitt.
Yes, here.
Obviously, Mr. Shadwell is here. Miss Can.
Yes.
Miss Freed.
Here.
There's somewhere. And Mr. Campbell is not. So, Miss Neal.
I'm here.
Catherine, welcome. Okay. Would you like to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? If Eddie can bring up the flag, I'll have to whip up and whoop. There we go. Okay. Are we ready?
Glitchy here.
Okay. Right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
for which it stands,
which it stands,
One
nation, under God,
indivisible, with
liberty and
justice for all.
Thank you.
Eddie, I assume this is the last time we have to do that, correct?
Right.
Well, you're going to have to continue to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Well,
but I know. Just yeah.
That was funny,
next
Eddie.
meeting will probably be in person. The trustees are having their first in person meeting tomorrow night, so
Right.
they're leading the way.
Donna, I just had a conversation with Loretta, and she said that under her thoughts are that the next meeting will be in person for us.
Oh, Planning Commission's going live next month.
Okay. Well, moving right along, want to approve the minutes from the last meeting, which was May the 4th. Has everybody had a chance to look at it?
Yes, I have.
Yes.
Did anybody have any queries? I take that as a no. Can I have somebody make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So it moves us on to new business. And I trust you've all read Eddie's material that he sent to us. And I'll pass it over to Eddie so that he can tell us what his analysis is, and we can make comments as appropriate.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Shadwell. So a lot of the material that you have is redundant, but I did have a couple items that I was given as homework to kind of bring back for feedback. And the first of those items pertain to cemeteries. One of the questions that we had was, how do cemeteries affect property values? So I did a little research on that. According to Realtor.com, it looks like the median home price in neighborhoods for houses in neighborhoods that are located near cemeteries have approximately 12% lower property values than comparable houses elsewhere.
Does that, hey, Eddie, real quick,
Yep.
What's the data as far as what radius of a cemetery, how far?
It just said neighborhoods.
Okay.
So I'm assuming, it definitely within eye shot.
Sure.
Right.
But that doesn't really overly surprise me. But for the most part, the other interesting part. So I followed up with the auditor's office to kind of determine the situation, and I kind of played out a scenario, and I asked them, if someone were to build a cemetery in like, let's just say there's a field next to an established neighborhood, and they build a cemetery. I said, would that affect the property values of the homes in that neighborhood? And they said, from an assessment perspective, they wouldn't go back and reassess the properties and say, oh, okay, you're getting hit 7 points because you're next to a cemetery. They still let the market kind of figure out, our houses, whatever the housing prices are from, negotiated arm's length transactions moving forward. That's how they're going to determine what the actual prices are. So the 12% lower value, I mean, that might just be people naturally not wanting to live near cemeteries, which again is not a surprise. But the mere presence of a cemetery popping up is not going to cause the auditor's office to lower everyone's property values. You know, your tax bill is not going to go down.
Interestingly enough, I happen to be in the neighborhood of Gate of Heaven. And I was driving through a subdivision and there was some people standing out front and, you know, shit, I'll stop and talk to anybody. But anyway, I talked to a neighbor and I said, hey, you know, you got the cemetery behind you. Do you find that as a detriment, plus what? They said, we love it. I said, really? Why? I said, well, number one, I don't have to worry about anybody ever building behind me. And jokingly said, I don't have noisy neighbors. Said the grass is always cut. And said, quite honestly, it's kind of pretty to look out there. So for them, they found it as a plus to have a cemetery abutting their property in the back because they never had to worry about anybody building on it or doing anything back there. Now, obviously, some people may be creeped out by it, but the two families I talked to, they both loved it. So,
Well,
Let me put-
my
I'd like
original question in that cemetery down there was, is there, do we need to have some sort of different conditional use permit where we go and ask the neighbors, do they mind if a cemetery is built next door to their property? Remembering that you know, what I think of NIMBYs just come out of the woodwork when something affects them. It doesn't affect them if it's down on, right down, you know, the other end of Locust Corner Road or down by the river or anything like that. But if this is behind your house and someone's going to buy that property and turn it into a cemetery, should we not notify the neighbors?
The
And
way
that was what prompted the original question.
The way that we have the text kind of drafted up right now is all of these by right cemeteries cemeteries are moved from permitted to conditional use permit. So that's kind of what the baseline that we have right now proposed. But in that case, we would be sending letters to adjoining property owners to let them know that there would be a public meeting.
Okay. Okay, well, that's good. I can live with that. I don't
Eddie?
live near it, but I can live with that.
I'd like to put in my 2 cents on that. I agree with Jeff about Gate of Heaven. Also Spring Grove for that matter. People love it down there, but that first paragraph, realtor.com, the 12% lower values, that's an absolutely meaningless statistic. Most cemeteries, say in the greater Cincinnati area, are in older neighborhoods like Mount Washington or going out Beachmont Avenue or Old St. Joseph Cemetery or whatever, where the homes have been there forever. The cemeteries there, probably the people that are adjacent to those cemeteries actually like the cemetery, just like in Jeff's case. But people are moving out into Sycamore Township, out into Delhi Township, and out into the townships. And of course, those property values where they're next to 100-year-old cemeteries are going to be lower in value. There's a saying, there's liars, there's damn liars, and there's statisticians. And that's an absolutely meaningless statistic in my view. But that's just my 2 cents worth.
I'll give you my 2 cents. If down there where we're talking this cemetery that popped up, if you would, if I was a property owner and had a house that was next to that property and I had a choice of that cemetery or a subdivision, I would vote for the cemetery in a heartbeat. But
Well,
that's just me.
okay, but let's talk about, there's been a lot of things because of Memorial Day and respecting, you know, our men and women that have been lost in battles and that. And my concern about cemeteries, they're fine. They wouldn't bother me. You know, the Pierce Cemetery, it's well maintained in that. But there's so many cemeteries now that are not being taken care of. They're weedy, they're overgrown, you know, headstones are knocked over. And that would be sad if, you know, we allow that to happen in Pierce Township.
Well, I would agree with you, and you're probably talking to one down there in Anderson or Mount Washington, whatever. That's off of whatever the hell that is, 4 Mile. 4 Mile, yeah. You know, that's one of those that is an ancient cemetery. You know, I think before I would want to put too many restrictions or covenants or whatever you want to call it on a possible cemetery conditions. And I don't know if we can do this, Eddie, jump in, but is there any way to, if you're worried about them going broke, going out of business, is there any way to put a bond on them so that if the township were to have to take it over, there is money someplace out there that would help support that?
You know, in my experience, I mean, I've dealt with kind of sureties, cash escrow, and things like that in the past with other sorts of uses in other jurisdictions. Now, I'd have to do a little research with townships to see if that would be something that we could do, that we could accommodate. We'd have to work with the fiscal office to make sure that they could, essentially, they probably have to set up a separate account where they could hold the cash escrow for the
Right.
cemetery. Which I don't think that's completely out of the question. I can definitely research that. That's not a problem. And I don't think it's a bad idea. But I'm glad that you mentioned that, though, because I do think that there are other uses, particularly like big box uses, like big box retailers that go out of business that have a similar issue where they're like Munchins is a good example of it, where they go out of business, and the only business that could ever fit inside of Munchin, you know, there's a very small number of businesses that could ever really reutilize a building of that size. And so there are a lot of communities that require that uses over a certain scale or size provide demolition bonds or redevelopment bonds and things like that. So in 25 years, if they're underutilized, you go defunct, you don't have just an empty building in a parking lot. So it's a similar concept, but I can definitely pull that up for you. I can definitely put that in my notes and determine, you know, what kind of ORC statutes and what other sorts of regulations might be in place that could affect it, could hinder it. But I think it's an idea worth exploring.
Well, you see what Loretta just popped up is that state law may dictate that. So that may be something to look into. And again, even if you could get a bond or what have you, you put it in an escrow, unless it's drawing some interest, 25 years from now, the value of it may be pretty low. But again, it might be some money to offset what cost the township would incur. And really the only cost that I could see would be the grass cutting, you know, maybe maintaining some gates or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay.
Eddie, refresh my memory. Excuse me, Jeff. How many acres are in that new cemetery down on Locust Corner?
I think it's 40.
40?
I believe so, yeah.
You know, a regular cemetery, you know, that church or whatever, or even a township, a city, whatever starts up wouldn't bother me. The problem I'm having with that cemetery is that is a new age cemetery, and we have no idea how those are going to perform over time. You know, who's going to maintain it? What are they going to have there? What are things going to look like? Are they going to mow it? Are they going to let it grow up and be natural? You know, those are my concerns about that cemetery. A regular cemetery, I wouldn't be concerned with, but the new age cemetery bothers me.
Would you be bothered if they said there will be no headstones? Because from what I've understood, right now there's rocks. You know, somebody takes a boulder and puts, you know, Billie Jean King's name on it, and it's out there. You know, again, what if they decide that we're not going to mow it? It's going to be natural, just like the burial process is. And it might just look like a waving wheat field out there. Again, I personally wouldn't have a problem with that.
I wouldn't want it next door to me. I have enough waving fields around our property now, and
Well, again, as I said before, if I had tall grass that's just blowing in the wind versus a subdivision, I'll take the blowing grass.
You know, I think kind of playing out the situation with the cemetery, you know, there are a lot of, like I know in some other places I've been, and it's probably common in Ohio too, you'll have old family farm cemeteries and things. And the most critical thing is having a plat that delineates a surveyed location as to where those sites are. Because inevitably, the only thing you're really concerned about is you don't want to inadvertently build your home or something over top of a cemetery, and that could be a unique catastrophe in of itself. But it almost seems like the worst thing that could happen is that it becomes overgrown, you know.
Well, I remember reading that article and I did walk it. And if you walk it, there are small flags that denote different, I'm assuming, plot levels because there were names on it. But I remember the article that I read, it talked that, you know, they had to abide by state laws. They couldn't just, you know, throw a body out on top of it and let it decompose and this and that. There were rules that they had to follow. So, you know, Eddie, you've probably got enough on your plate, but I will ask, is it possible for you to try to contact the owners and get a better understanding? I think it would help all of us if we had a better understanding of what their rules, regulations are, and not only their own, but what they're governed by state-wise.
Right, because it doesn't have any plats. It's not like they're platted spots. It's, you know, well, that's a nice little mound in the ground. Is anybody?
Well, Stan, I disagree with you because, again, when I walked it, there were definitely flags that denoted certain areas. So somebody has gone in there and laid that out. I truly don't think you just walk along and go, oh, that clump of glass looks good, I'm going to put Aunt Betty there. I mean, you have to designate it somehow, some way, and I'd have to believe that there is some plats because, again, they're designated with marker numbers out there. So marker numbers as in plats.
Okay, well, I'd like to see that because it's not like a traditional cemetery where there's straight lines and little pieces and you know exactly where the graves are because that's the way it's set out. This is apparently the way it read.
Well, the flags are in a straight line. When I was there were flags in a designated straight line going across. Loretta just popped up. They use GPS. So again, with no grave markers or no stones as such, you're not going to see anything. But there are, as she said, GPS coordinates. And when I looked at the flags, they were in a fairly straight line as if somebody had laid a tangent line out there and put them in against that.
Okay. Okay.
Now, with the grass getting higher, it's going to be harder than hell to see them.
So I've got 3 things I'm going to do. I'm going to reach out. I'll reach out to the owners of Heritage Acres and see if they can provide a little more information. They were really easy to work with and friendly, so I don't think they'll have any issue with that. Particularly if they can get some more press, sort of thing, for their cemetery because it is a business. I'll research cemetery bonds or just bonds generally for maintenance and so forth, and then I'll also bring back maybe a little bit of information about survey plats and things like that. Because when I worked in North Carolina, we didn't have like what we required was when you established a cemetery, you had to survey out and stake markers just like it was its own separate lot, and you had to record the boundaries with the recorder's office, so that it would at any time that property changed hands, you would know exactly where the area was that was delineated as a cemetery.
I appreciate it.
Okay,
Sure.
I have one more thought. Maybe they would like to come and talk with us at our next meeting.
Okay. No problem. I'll get on it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, back to you, Eddie.
Eddie,
So
if you need it, if you need any help, I'm still working from the house. You know, if you want some help, I'll be glad to help you with that as well.
Oh, I appreciate that. It shouldn't be too. It's just a quick phone call. It shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
I've got other.
I just throw it out there for you.
I appreciate the teamwork, though. I like that. Which also, by the way, I forgot to mention this. So Mr. Stitt was reappointed to the zoning commission.
Woohoo!
So
Y'all stuck with me for 5 more years.
yeah. Point of clarification for the text amendments, development review procedures. So it's minor additions and accessory structures, including signage, resulting in the more stringent of 10% expansion or 1,000 square feet may be reviewed administratively. So what that means is certain minor changes within the downtown overlay can be reviewed administratively. Anything that exceeds 1,000 square feet, like a 1,500 square foot expansion or a 12% expansion, those sorts of things would all fall under the zoning commission site plan review. So that was just a point of clarification. Just wanted to confirm that everyone was okay with that, and that would be the language that we would proceed with.
Well, I'm still, I'm still hung up on a couple of the words in your notes. When you were talking about cemeteries, you moved to conditional use permit, but you didn't put you put in AS.
Where are you, Stan? Where are you, Stan?
Oh, back on page 4, back at the start. On
Page 4?
Page
Oh,
4B.
I see. I know what's going on. So, we went through a lot of like the conditional use permits and things. There were no changes from the last meeting that we had, like the last work session that we had. So anything that didn't change or didn't need clarification, I just left the same. So because we had discussed conditional uses, and some of these other items we kind of covered. And I'm going back and touching on the items that I was kind of given instruction to bring back more information on and that sort of thing for clarification.
Okay. What I'm saying is on page 4, 1B, cemeteries, you've got moved to conditional use permits, and you list all of the things that are in what used to be Amelia, but you don't mention section 5041. You do SFR, TFR, etc., but it doesn't, I think it should specify that it's in section 5041, so that we know what it's saying.
Oh, you want me to put 5041 in here? Okay.
Yeah, 5041 in there.
Are you talking 5041, the chart, non-residential use table?
Yeah.
Not a problem. Yep, I can definitely clarify that.
Okay. Fair enough.
And when you see this actual formal application, I will have the I'll prepare the text so that you can see what's changing and what's being added in new and everything like that. I didn't want to go through and have to reinvent the wheel if there was still work to be done to hash out.
Right. Okay. Okay, my next question was on the next page, on page 5, right at the very bottom, on the dreaded downtown overlay. You've got in there, through innovative and creative site design, architecture consistent with the previously adopted, and you remove village comprehensive plan and make township plan. I don't think you can say that because the township never had a plan for that section. Even though we adopted the quote ex Amelia village plan, I'm not sure that wording really stands up to review. It doesn't stand up to review for me.
Which one are you talking about, Stanley?
Right at the very bottom, J, on page 5J.
Okay. 1810A2.
Yeah, deleted village comprehensive plan and just put township plan. Township never had a plan. And even though we've taken in there the Amelia zoning, I don't know. I just get hung up on this downtown overlay. Unless the trustees come out and have a meeting where they call for a downtown in quote ex Amelia, I don't think we should be bandying this around. It's like as if it's a foregone conclusion. It's going to get built. Something's going to happen about it sometime out in the future. And I'm not sure that out of the 15,000 people who used to comprise Pierce Township, not the 18, you've added another 3,000 people to it. I don't know if the other 15,000 people want to do this. And we're putting this in as part of the overlay or part of our zoning, and it makes it allowable. So, I don't know what everybody else thinks. It just worries me.
Stanley, how would we address that issue with the other 15,000? I see your point. What would we do rather than put it in there? You got a suggestion?
Stan, you're not so much objective to putting it in. Do I understand that you're objective to removing the words village comprehensive plan and putting township plan in? You'd be okay if we left the verbiage village comprehensive plan?
Which had been in the village comprehensive plan.
Because that designates that.
If I can just interject, the reason why we said why I'm saying it's not the township plan, it's township plans with plural, just because, like, for instance, we've had since the dissolution, we have also had the COVID impact study that has occurred, for instance, and there might be material in there that is applicable to Amelia as well as parts of Pierce and that sort of thing. But if we just say village comprehensive plan, it ignores the fact that there is another plan or has been another study, or that there will be other studies in the future. So by saying township plans, we can actually accommodate a whole array of different possibilities, outcomes, as well as just all these different plan documents that are going to be coming down the pipeline, so that we won't have to go back and change the text when the village comprehensive plan is just done away with, because we have had the chance to create the entire new township plan update that includes everything. So it's kind of mostly just a housekeeping item to kind of not have to go back and just fix it. Township plans is just more inclusive. It doesn't mean that our township plan that studied areas outside of Amelia is going to be applied in areas that were not part of the township when it was created. It just means we have all these plans. We'll have traffic plans. We'll have small, area neighborhood plans, all these different sorts of things. So that's all that was intended with that.
Okay. As long as it doesn't mean that this is green lighted and will just happen. That's my worry, that we're green lighting something that maybe the other 15,000 people agree. Maybe it's just me, but it's not the dead center of Pierce Township. Dead center is probably, if you measure from one end to the other, it's 6 miles long. The dead center is probably where the Kroger's is, or maybe where Glen Mary is. Not that little bit, and it's got horrible access because it's on Oak Road. And you look at that and you go, I don't want this to get a green light without the majority of people living in Pierce Township being able to look at it and agree one way or the other. Now, to Dick's point, I don't know how you get the people to agree to anything. It's only if it's in their damn backyard that the NIMBYs come out and, and go crazy. But I would like people to understand if some work's going to happen there, and the original plan, which was being bandied around, starts to take fruition, I would like people to know about it and understand. So if you
I think it's a bit of, the fact that it's called a downtown overlay, it's no more formal of a designation than anything else. It was just, that was the name of the tool that was already in place in Amelia
Right.
before it evolved. From a functional perspective, it just gives, Miss Freedy has explained this, or she has brought this up too, where we're in a spot where we have a very old Amelia plan document, and there's also a lot of development and growth occurring simultaneously. This gives us the ability to review these particular parcels and development areas with a more fine-tooth comb in the interim. There very well could be nothing that comes through that needs to be developed. The fact that it's called the downtown overlay, that's just a carryover name. It could just be called overlay. It could be called any number of things. All it does is that instead of a site plan just going through staff's office, it goes through the zoning commission, so you guys get to see it.
Well,
That's essentially the biggest part of it.
keep in mind, as Loretta popped in there before, that no zoning text or map changes can be made without a public hearing to discuss it. So by making this verbiage change, it's not like it's a free pass. Keep in mind, this all will still have to come back before us with the general public. So as Stan, as you say, if I understand it correctly, if we do have a public hearing on this, the people that may be opposed of it will have a chance to voice their opinion. And correct me if I'm wrong, Eddie, but at that point, we will then have a chance to either vote for it or against it. But right now, we're just looking at the verbiage, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Right. Well, of course, when you go to have a public meeting, Jeff, you put the word out that there's a public meeting, and you mention something like that. Who's going to come? Unless it's absolutely touching their property, nobody really gives. Nobody really cares, and there may be some adherents who want to push this forward, and they'll be the only ones that turn up. But okay, you're going to have a public hearing. Public hearing it'll be.
Well, you got the trustees also. So, we may vote one way, but we know how it is. The trustees may want to see it the other way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Okay.
But let me say this, Dan. I will say this. I do agree with you on the verbiage. The way it reads that it's the Pierce Township's plan, when in fact it was previously the Amelia Village Comprehensive Plan. And I do agree with you in that state that I would leave that verbiage in there, maybe we had adopted by the formal Village of Amelia Comprehensive Plan. And that way it clearly states that was their plan and not our plan, that it was adopted from the previous plan that the Village of Amelia had.
Right.
What if we just say adopted plans? Because what I'm saying is, what we don't want to do is just create more
Animosity?
Well, no, Mike. This is mostly just an administrative thing. Township plans just means any plans that we have now that pertain to Amelia, or any plans in the future that we do in the coming months or years, that'll apply. That's all. It doesn't mean that we're taking the village plan and just throwing it out. It just means we have plans that are going to be put in place and plans that are in place right now that affect Amelia. And we don't want to just pigeonhole and say, oh, you just comply with the village comp plan when, we have the COVID impact study and things like that, for instance. It's a township plan. And it isn't just an Amelia specific plan, but it also has areas in Amelia that it applies to. And so maybe if we just say adopted plans, or
I would be happier with that instead of the words township plans.
Okay. Plans, right? I can live with that. Yeah. I just want to make sure that the whole 18,000 people who live in the township get their say in what happens within the township. Okay. Eddie's just changing.
Yeah, and I mean,
the
and what we're doing here, this actually makes the process that much more democratic because there for many of these site plans, just like what I'm showing in the development review procedures here, these plans will be required to have a public meeting. So it isn't just, oh, you find out, and when you see the construction already occurring, oh wow, I didn't know that was developed. With this,
Right.
if someone builds a brand new commercial building, for instance, in the overlay area, or proposes it, that application will be publicly broadcast through this meeting, through the zoning commission, so people will actually
Okay.
see and know that it's occurring.
Okay.
But so circling back, with the exception of like if somebody wants, if it's like a minor, if someone builds a storage building or does a small addition on the building, my recommendation was some of the minor stuff could be administrative, but the more major stuff would come to the commission. That's what this is on the PowerPoint right now. Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. The other thing is I mentioned a cross. So we have a regulation right now in the zoning resolution. It's 5.04F. It's a development condition that already exists. And so all bars and taverns presently, if someone were to build a new bar or new tavern right now, they have to be set back 300 feet from educational facilities, churches, and places like that. What we had discussed before was cross-referencing brew pubs and breweries and that sort of thing into that as well, so that they would also have to comply with that 300-foot regulation. I just wanted to confirm that you were okay with that, as well as the unless waiver letters are obtained by the applicant from the affected property owners. So I just wanted to discuss that and see if this regulation made sense and was something that you guys wanted to proceed with, or if it needs clarification or needs to be changed.
How would that change affect? Oh, Lord, I forget the property that came up a couple meetings ago. Guy came in, got a building permit, and we think he's going to put a wedding venue in. You know where I'm talking about, up at like Pond Run area, Eddie, up in there, and several neighbors, I guess, complained. How would would this affect that in any way, shape, or form?
Well, it wouldn't. But that's a good point of clarification. So there was probably some confusion on that. I think that the neighborhood was convinced that he was going to be doing the absolute most annoying, worst thing in their minds, which would be creating this wedding venue and all that sort of thing. We met with them, and they confirmed, no, we're just going to be residential, and we might have like a community garden and might grow some fruits and vegetables, that sort of thing. But
Okay.
to your point though, like if a wedding venue and things like that, like if they were to proceed under the agricultural exemption, zoning wouldn't apply to them. If someone were to kind of try and get a use through as an ag exemption, but that's not. We haven't been. We've been given assurance that they're not doing that. They're just going to be residential.
Okay.
But I wanted to make sure that you guys were comfortable with this. What was added in was the brew pub component, as well as the unless waiver letters are obtained by the applicant from all affected property owners. So what that means is if your house is 275 feet from a proposed bar, you have. You can leave the status quo and not say I'm okay with it, or conceivably you could provide a letter saying I don't really care that there's going to be a tavern located 290 feet from my house or 100 feet from my house, that sort of thing.
Eddie, do we need to have that last sentence unless waiver letters are obtained? Can't you?
We don't have to.
I don't like that. I really don't. You can create a lot of animosity You know, if it, just say there's 10 houses and 6 say okay and 4 says say no. I don't
Okay.
do that. I don't think we should allow waiver letters at all.
Okay.
Because
Does
I can
anybody
get-
else agree with me?
I
I
can
agree
waiver
with you,
letters
Donna.
by giving the people that sign them relatively free access into my tavern.
Well, let me ask you this. If somebody, let's say somebody wants to build one and it's 295 feet from a zoning and they couldn't do it, could they apply for a variance for that? And
Oh,
in
yeah.
that case, all of those neighbors would be notified.
Well, not necessarily. They could apply for a variance, but the only people that are statutorily going to be notified are the people who actually touch the property. So you could be 295 feet away, but you could be 5 parcels removed, if that makes
So
sense.
in essence, that could be, they could get approval that way,
Right.
or they could be denied. It could go either way. Yeah.
I like, you know, I like straight out, this is the way it is. I don't like unless. That's too wishy-washy.
Well, no. I agree with you, Donna. I'm saying if that sentence is not in there, could somebody that wants to start a brew pub, whatever the heck you want to call it, that borders a residential area and is within that 300 feet, could they go to zoning variance and get a variance on that property? And it sounds like Eddie's answer is yes, they could,
Yes, they could.
or they could apply for a variance. Now, whether or not it's granted, something else, but they could apply for it.
And you don't, and if they can apply for it, then you don't need that sentence.
Right. So I would agree with you, Donna, that should be taken out because that almost it almost invites them to go get a waiver. Where if you don't put it in there, they got to think it up.
Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
Are we all okay with that? Scratching that?
Yeah.
Eddie, you okay?
Oh yeah. I knocked out. That's not a problem. I crossed it out, so that won't be an issue. So as long as you're okay with the rest, I was going to add brew pubs in. So you guys like brew pubs and those sorts of uses being part of that 300 foot, like keeping them 300 feet away from schools and houses and things like that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me ask you this. Is a winery covered in there?
I'd have to do a little bit more research on that. Generally a vineyard, if a winery is associated with a vineyard, it's most likely exempt through the agricultural exemption regulations, which would, it would not be applicable.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah. Okay. This other portion is a little bit of a moot point. Our current definition of restaurants basically states that if more than 35% of the restaurant is a bar, like sometimes you'll see like a bar in like Butterbees or Applebee's or something like that, there's a bar portion of them. If the bar is like 40% of the square footage, they have to meet the 300 foot requirement. And it doesn't sound like you guys have an issue with that at all.
Nope.
Okay. All righty. I'll leave that alone. Okay. This was the original map that showed the entirety of the overlay expansion area. You can see the premier site and a couple of those residential parcels were included in that. It has since been changed and reduced to include primarily just these parcels that touch a butt on State Route 125 there. You can see that.
I like that better.
Okay. So we made that change as well. This was the original rezoning map. The yellow and the blue were R1 and R2 parcels that were going to be changed to Amelia Neighborhood Business. That was redacted and now just includes the Amelia Suburban to Amelia Neighborhood, the red portion. So it's red on this portion and hatched. And this is the official kind of moving forward map that shows the area discussed. and everything else was taken out. And per Mr. Stitt's request, I put together a motion so that everyone's
Thank
head
you.
doesn't explode trying to rehash this whole thing. So this is just a general boilerplate. I make a motion to initiate. This is just to initiate the application to amend the zoning map and resolution as detailed in the staff report dated June 1st. That's the one that you have right now. Further, all non-material edits and cross-references necessary to complete the edits shall be included as it pertains to the topic items below. And I listed out the items that are included. Now, as a point of clarification, the non-material edits and cross-references, that just means like the index will have to change and page numbers might change and things like that. But it's not, there's nothing material that will actually change. So, but we always inevitably come up to, there's footnotes and cross-references and things that need to be ironed out just to be clear on. And Loretta brought this up, and we had discussed this. There are parcels that are split zoned in the Amelia neighborhood, and my initial effort was to kind of rectify that under the last under our last discussion, and just kind of a quick go through on that. If you see, let me think here, the easier way to do this. Okay, I'm going to share a different screen with you so it makes a little bit more sense. Okay, you guys see that now?
Yes.
Okay, so if you see this parcel here, for instance, this is the Emphason property. This property here, it's the yellow portion is the R1, and the portion that doesn't have any color on it right now, that's Amelia neighborhood. So as you can see with that parcel is presently split zoned. And, my initial effort, like my initial intent was to just change it all to Amelia neighborhood so that we can do away with the split zoning circumstance to create a little bit more of a more streamlined and an easier regulatory environment. Now that is the same circumstance here on this parcel as well. You can see this is all a single parcel here, and it's similarly split zoned, where this front portion here is business, the yellow portion is residential. And so that's what Loretta was mentioning here, and that we were going through. And that generally it's best to keep kind of each lot have its own dedicated zoning classification to it.
So that parcel that you've got your cursor on right there, that
Yes.
will be a split zone.
Well, it is split zoned right now, and
So that's being okay.
Right. And so if I'm going to go back to this really quick here. So that is currently split zoned. And as you can see here, this yellow, are you guys seeing that again now? The yellow?
Yes.
Okay. That hatched area, I was proposing to rezone that to Amelia neighborhood business so that it would match the property along State Route 125. That was the initial.
That property in red will be split because part of it is part of that yellow, which is now going away, right?
The yellow is not going away. Well, the yellow is no longer proposed to go away, but everything along 125 there is already business.
But maybe I'm confused. On your current picture, that red portion overflows into the yellow portion, correct? That property owner?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so only part of his property will remain that the red, if you would, on 125.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah, and
what
it basically-
heartache does that create for him if he wants to build a business that will come to the back of his property? Can he do that?
So that area right there is just that's what Mr. Stitt was referencing here. That area that it has in the blue outline, that is the area that's part of the same parcel but is zone business. To answer your question, so if someone were to, if they were to come through and try and redevelop the property, they would be able to build commercial on only the commercial portion. But the portion that has the yellow residential, they wouldn't be able to build their commercial building on that part of the lot.
Okay. So that the zoning would stay split on that. And again, I guess they could go for a variance if their business they're building would extend back past that business line into the residential area.
Yeah, I mean, we would prefer that, that they don't do that. And part of the problem is that,
I guess we just have to make it clear if and when that ever comes up, because it will be part of the zoning. It will be part of the map, and anybody that owns that property will be made aware of that for any changes.
That's Pommett's property, isn't it?
yes, it is.
That whole piece, because he also runs along beside the bit you've got in the square of blue with those half a dozen buildings on them there, one of which is his train station and the place where he's got the steam engine. I think that's the bit that's protruding into the yellow section. And it's the piece he didn't sell to the Glen Mary people when he sold it off because it was behind his house. Loretta just made a point. There's no definitive line that signals where the cutoff portion is, if I remember correctly. It's just a split zone.
Yeah, that's part of the issue we would be dealing with. Now, when someone comes through with a site plan, they're going to have to provide a surveyed and engineered site plan that's going to delineate that. But again, that is one of the problems where we know on GIS there's a rough boundary, but
Right.
it's still rough. It's always just cleaner to keep the entire, to keep one. We know where the property lines are, for instance. That we can definitely prove.
Right.
But the interior becomes a bit more precarious.
Well, I was the one that brought this up the last meeting. I still agree leaving those yellow areas as residential and not changing those over to business just because they have a portion on 125.
And I agree with you. If they want to do something, they need to approach and ask for a rezoning.
Exactly.
Not just do it, because I don't know what they want. And maybe they really want this for a reason and they need to make a case for what they're doing.
Okay.
I
I've been speaking to Mr. Palmer just because we were studying his property and everything. So he will obviously be invited. Like when there is a public hearing, he'll be invited to the meeting as well, so that he's not just blindsided by anything. So we've continued to be as transparent as possible. When I brought up this initial rezoning, he didn't have an issue with it. But again, it's always more powerful if you can hear it directly from him. But just wanted to be aware of that.
if I can put my 2 cents worth, I don't like split zone property, and I think we should do away with everyone we can get rid of. Because it's not going to cost him, if we're going to make that, what is your proposal, Eddie? What would you make it?
Amelia neighborhood business.
His property's more valuable as neighborhood business than it is residential. I think we take away the split zoning.
Yeah, but then it puts that neighborhood business on Jenny Lynn, that big other yellow section too, if we're going to get rid of the zone, that one I have more concern with. I don't want to see business there.
I'd rather have them come to us and approach us for a rezone on that particular property than just arbitrarily doing all three pieces.
Right.
You really think there's going to be business go in down that road there, a 2-lane road?
Well, there's business on it now. And the traffic's terrible. You wait through lights on that street right now.
Again, Donna, who knows?
Are we talking on Chapel?
No, it's,
it's
well,
Oak
it's
Street.
Jenny Lynn, or what they call it, Oak Street, I guess there. It turns into Jenny Lynn.
Right.
It's Oak Street.
What business is there now?
On the other side of the street is the credit union
Yeah, but not.
next
but
to the
not on that
library,
side.
That's,
right there. Yeah.
no, I understand that. I go past there all the time on the way to the post office and stuff. That credit union is not a business where you have hundreds and hundreds of cars in there. When I go past there, there's normally nobody in there.
No, but who's to say what's going to go in that on the other side if we suddenly make it business?
Okay, but what's going to go in there and how much traffic is there going to be if residential goes in there?
Well, it's only.
I think
what
there's going to be less
acreage.
traffic with residential than if there's a business. That street can't support any type of traffic for a business.
Right.
Again, I'm the one that probably brought this hornet's nest up last meeting because I did not agree with changing everything we see on that map in yellow to business, and I still don't agree with it. But that's my personal opinion.
Right. I mean,
And-
to me, if you leave the piece at the front that's already business and this overlay stuff still exists, then that's what they're stuck with, is the piece at the front, not the giant resident, R1 out the back. And I'd like to see them, even though it's a split zoning, and I don't like split zoning particularly either, I'd like to see that protected to some extent, where they've got to come in and ask for a zoning change in order to utilize that extra piece of land.
I would agree.
And I don't like the split zoning either, but I think the control is more important at this point than the split zoning issue.
And personally, I would be more willing to grant that property owner a change of zoning because he does have property that touches 125 versus those other two parcels that only touch the side street.
Right.
So my vote is to leave it the way Eddie's got it redrawn.
Right. That's what I would like to do. Is that in your recommendation, Eddie, in your motion?
Well, as we do with this commission here, we make things, we get pretty dirty with all this stuff. So that is not formally in the motion, but I think that we can probably craft it up.
Although it's clear on the map, isn't it?
Yeah. So if your proposal is to just proceed with, by mentioning the June 1st staff report, that includes the exhibits, those maps.
Right.
I agree.
In it.
Okay.
But so the things that would change to this would be the cemeteries are taken out. So that's one. Cemeteries are pulled out of this just because there's further study that needs to be done on that. We're changing township plans to adopted plans. We're removing the waiver letter language from bar and taverns, that sort of thing. And I think that's it. That's what I have in my notes.
What still comes back to my favorite subject, on there you have D, Downtown Overlay District, map and text. And if you look at page 8 of your recommendations, At the bottom, you've got Amelia Comprehensive Plan. That is no longer an appropriate expression. I'm sorry. General purpose, develop a village center to service a community focus, I-7. Protect the village scale and character and improve its image. I don't see how we can have that in there.
So
But the
that
village
is-
center,
Yeah, I mean, how you can have something in there where the general plan purpose is to develop a village center to serve as a community focus, protect the village scale and character, and improve its image. The village does not exist. You have to do something else, you know.
I think that the thing to remember is, you know, like I guess like Amelia is a neighborhood. It's obviously no longer a statutory village, but it is a neighborhood. And before they dissolved, and presently that area had been, they designated that intersection along Oak and Maple and going to Floral and everything. That's kind of the central area. But before you get to Hamlet or before you get into Pierce, that's what's generally kind of has always been kind of considered the city center, not city center, but the neighborhood center of Amelia. So the fact that it says that the words Amelia and village and things like that, that's just from their plan that, again, we will update to enjoin the entire neighborhood with the rest of the township in our planning documents when we have a chance to get all of that updated. So right now,
hey,
so go ahead.
question. Stan, would you feel better if someone made a motion that, looking at Eddie's thing here, that says, I make a motion to initiate the application to amend the Pierce Township zoning map and resolution as detailed in the staff report dated such and such. Furthermore, let it be known that the name Amelia Village is no longer proper. And when referring to the village, we are referring to what was previously known as the Village of Amelia. With something like that, because I know that you really do not like the word village or Amelia in there, but yet I understand why it's there for clarification purposes. But would you prefer that it somehow is stated as previously known as or something of that?
Previously known as might make a difference, right? Because, you know, the very fact that it says on page 8, Amelia Comprehensive Plan, if the village of Amelia has actually been dissolved, God only knows if it has legally, because the state's still fritzing around. If it has legally been dissolved, then that is an inappropriate expression to use. That's my whole point. And you know, if you changed it,
keep in mind, the name Amelia is never going to go away as long as there's a post office up there called the Amelia Post Office. And my mailing address is Amelia, Ohio, and not Pierce Township.
Right. No, mine's Cincinnati, for crying out loud.
Well, I'm in Amelia.
Okay. But I mean, I trust you see what I mean. There's a whole mass of stuff in there about the community character, the physical attributes, rhubarb, as if it's almost a done deal. And, you know, to me, I can't see how it's a done deal for 1/6 of the township.
Well, maybe in this motion, maybe we ought to clarify, and Eddie jump in at any time, or Loretta, you know, that furthermore, any references to the name Amelia are assumed as the previous Village of Amelia, which is township. Something for clarification that just draws it out that there is, quote unquote, no Village of Amelia. It was the previously known area named the Village of Amelia.
Can you put something like that in there, Eddie?
Yeah,
I
definitely.
throw my 2 cents worth in. Why do we continue to talk about a village center when the Pierce Township has not been included in that discussion for a village center. You know, the village, like we said, the village is dissolved. I know you put out that little questionnaire, Eddie, but you know, that wasn't Pierce Township answering that. And to me, the idea of developing a village center should go away.
Yeah, so the reasoning is basically this. So when the village dissolved, the zoning went completely away. And the only way to you either have any development can go anywhere it wants in Amelia because there's no zoning and there's no controls on it, or we adopt zoning. So we decided to go ahead and adopt zoning.
Right.
And the cleanest thing to do was to pull their existing zoning in. And in order to do that, we had to adopt their underlying land use plan documents. That's the Amelia comp plan. So that was the plan that they had in place that was supposed to be guiding how things developed, what was supposed to be business, what was supposed to be industrial, what's residential, and so forth. So we adopted that document to be the underlying justification for why we have zoning in the Amelia neighborhood. Now, in untangling this entire Amelia situation, you know, we did that as a stopgap measure, knowing that, you know, that's better and preferable to just a free for all of people building wherever they want, and there being in the township not having any say whatsoever in it. So that was the reasoning and logic with it. And so there are imperfections with it. The word Amelia is around and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, we can litigate all of that. And I do think that it needs to be, I think we need to have some discussions about that. But in the interim, we're trying to just make sure that all of this whole thing that was just thrown on us, there's a lot of undeveloped parcels. There's a lot of zoning that, you know, my professional recommendation would be to address in a certain way. The Amelia did business in a way that was very different than the way that we did, the way that the township does business. And so there's a lot to iron out and smooth out. And in the interim, this is a measure to give us a little bit more control based off of circumstances on the ground, and to allow us to act more quickly to address this downtown area that we were given. Because, you know, whether you like Amelia or not, or, you know, have an opinion about a particular nuance about it, that area is a very, very active area in the township generally. We're seeing a lot of development. We hear a lot about, you know, there's a significant amount of traffic going in there. There's been a lot of investment in there. There's a number of township-owned parcels in that location, and for all intents and purposes, it was the center of the village, and it was delineated that way in the plan. So, just my recommendation has been to until we can get more updated plans in place and do the research and do our due diligence, we need to have a more comprehensive review procedure in place. And that's what the overlay district does. It allows us to look at things on a more case-by-case basis instead of getting kind of just rushed with development. And then we're inevitably then we're stuck with it. And what the zoning was, it said that's what you can do, and that's it. And we have to live with it. So that was the reasoning behind that.
Did everybody look at the results of the survey after last meeting?
No, because as far as I was concerned, the survey never came, you know, I never saw there was a survey. So I'm not sure well, having worked at market research for some time, I do understand how surveys work. So,
Hey, Eddie, do you mind if I share my screen for a minute?
Oh, not at all. Are you able to do it? Can you get the controls or?
I guess the reason I brought this up tonight is it seems like we are continuing to promise the people that lived in the village of Amelia a fancy area,
This is the survey, guys.
money going into an area that, you know, to me would not be I mean, if you're, Eddie, if you're looking at this, you know, develop a village center, it's just language. We're not promising any money to go into it. We're not going to put any research into it. It's just language to get us by now. I don't have a problem with it. I just don't want the people that live in the village of Amelia thinking right now we're going to build another, you know, Taj Mahal building up there for people to hold meetings in, and that when the village or Pierce Township itself, we need a new administration building to accommodate what we have right now. You know, am I making any sense at all?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you are to me because, you know, page 8 is what it says, Amelia Comprehensive Plan, general plan purpose, develop a village center to serve as a community focus and protect the village scale and character. I'm sorry, there has to be something that says this was what it was before we rolled it into our zoning regulations, but it doesn't mean that this is a done deal.
Stan, I agree. And that's why I said we can make that part of the motion.
Right.
You know, just for argumental sakes, you know, this is the most important part of this survey is what I've got shared right now. 226 responded. 68% were those of the former village of Amelia. But that still says that there were 32% from Pierce Township that answered that.
Right.
And if you look at the summary, that basically is a good summary. So I agree that we should put the verbiage in that this was the former village of Amelia. But by the same token, those people, at least those on the south side of 125, are our people now. And that is their opinion. And even though they were previously Amelia, they're us now. So I think we have to listen to what they have to say as well.
No,
That's my only point. You cannot discard those people. They have their voice is every bit as important as yours, mine, or the people that have lived in the previous village of Pierce Town or the township of Pierce. You can't discard their voices.
there are 226 people out of 3,800, and that's, you know, it's.
But again, Stan, if you didn't take the survey, tough tutu. It was advertised. It was, I mean, hell, I found out about it. It was talked about in our zoning meetings. We knew it was coming up.
Right. But I mean, I'm looking at it. It's 224 people out of the 3,000 odd that lived in the ex-village of Amelia, or out of the 18,000 people that live in Pierce Township. It's quote unquote a relatively.
It's a small package, but as Susan said, I've done surveys for my customers. You know, people get excited if you get a 2% return.
Okay.
Susan, am I wrong?
Oh yeah. I'm happy if I'm into 3 or 4% response rates at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's
bad.
People start doing backflips, but that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to build a new building based on 2 or 3% of answers?
Nobody's saying that. We're just saying that Stan's comment that nobody replied, that may be true, but as the standards go by surveys, this was a good return for the survey.
Well, can I put out a new survey? Can I pay for it and ask the people of Pierce Township if they want a new administration building so there's room to move around in there?
Sure.
Are we going to build me one?
Doesn't mean we're going to build it, just like it doesn't mean we're going to build an Amelia Center.
I don't know. I'd worry about the wording.
Well, you know, I think that Mr. Stitt brings up a lot of really good points. You know, the other thing too, with the survey did not, we weren't asking residents or respondents to tell us that the area we're showing is the downtown overlay. We didn't ask them to confirm or deny if that was the downtown or any of that sort of thing. What we did ask was more along the lines of, does the community have a desire for a community center, a gathering place? Do you have an interest in a farmer's market? Is that, do you support, or is
Right, here's a good
walk-
question of it, Eddie.
Yeah. And we left it open when we said like downtown. It's amorphous. I mean, we did not ask for specific boundaries to be delineated, but when we do a land use plan, we will have maps out and things of that effect where we want to figure out neighborhood boundaries and get a rough idea of different things like that. But this was very much just get a pulse on things and figure out what services people are looking to get more of and all that sort of stuff. So,
I like your word pulse. I was going to say that this is a pulse. It's one point in time. It gave us some general information to understand how people were feeling. And it's not as scientific. The bigger deal to me isn't the sample size. It's the fact that this was a convenient sample, that we didn't try to like get a representative sample. So if we really want to do research in the township, you need to be actually calling people and trying to get people to take it. And it's more random sampling. So
Right.
if you really want to get statistical.
Right. Eddie needs to remove the comment on the top of page 10. The demand for a village center, destination location, focal point in the area has been demonstrated by the immediate land use plan and reiterated in the recent survey. The immediate land use plan was Toddley's work, and that no longer exists, quote unquote. And reiterated in the recent survey. I'm sorry, to me, it's not representative would be the word. I'm sorry, Susan, but I don't regard it as representative of.
Well, no, it's not representative. I said it wasn't representative. It's a convenient sample.
Right. Well, then in that case, we shouldn't be using it as a basis for our recommendation. And there has to be some change in those wordings there to initiate the application or amend the zoning map and include where you've got downtown overlay district map and text. There has to be some words around that say it was a leftover from the previous administration or something to that effect. Of course, I don't want this to be a fait accompli. That's my whole point. So, but if everybody wants to go ahead and approve that, somebody make a motion, and you can all vote on it, and we'll be done. How's that sound? Does anybody want to question, make some changes to that motion?
I'd be willing to make the motion. It's just, I don't want so much verbiage in there that it's convoluted. Nobody knows what the heck we were trying to say tonight.
Dick
and Catherine, you two are lawyers. Put some good verbiage in there without it being too legalese.
I like the village formerly known as Amelia, the area of the formerly known as like the singer formerly known as Prince.
That's kind of what I was trying to say. I'm just trying to find the right words for it without muddying it all up.
I defer to Catherine. But yeah, just say that formerly, the area formerly known as Amelia.
Yeah, we just say references to the village of Amelia refer to the former village of Amelia and are used solely for clarity in the documents.
Yeah, I think that's completely accurate. We're doing that. Some of this language, it's just mere convenience. the best case scenario, we're going to update all of this and clean out all the language, consolidate all this, these land use documents into one. It's just a matter of us getting the time to get in there and do it and have the public hearings and do the research. So right now it's unfortunate holdovers that are only for administrative reference.
Yeah, and I think that, if you think of it as when they're referenced in these documents, it's really just like a description in a property description or something, just so we know what area is being addressed, and not, and I understand the concern. You don't want anyone to look at this and they think there's an implication that this former plan is moving forward and is in the works and resources are being devoted to it. I understand that concern. You don't want anyone to, we don't want this to imply that is a current ongoing project. So I think that if you make for me, I don't want to throw a bunch of legalese in there, but I think if you just clearly state that, any references are for purposes of clarity and description.
So would that statement be before the conditions A through G, or would they be one of the A through?
I would put it at the top. I would just insert a sentence in there for clarity.
I agree with Catherine on that. Put it in the preamble up there at the top.
Okay, why don't one of you two make the motion?
Also, before we dive headfirst in, I just want to make sure everyone is clear with the items that were discussed to be redacted, like cemeteries being taken out. I think that was an item that we said, that seemed to be the consensus on the discussion. Changing the word township to adopted plans, and then removing the waiver letter from the bar tavern definition. Those are some items. So whoever makes the motion will want to include those edits as well.
Catherine, you make the motion. Right.
You got to unmute yourself, girl.
I am jotting down a sentence here.
There you go.
Hopefully that'll be clear.
Eddie, and Catherine, no offense, Catherine, but as an alternative, is Catherine allowed to make the motion?
Yeah, that's a good point. Someone else can make it.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So that is a good point. Since we have 5 full members present.
Yeah, someone else should make it.
Yeah.
Would you like to give us the words?
I'm working on a sentence here. Hold on just a second.
Catherine, if you give us the words, I'd be glad to parrot it.
Okay.
Are you writing it or typing it, Catherine?
I'm writing it, but I can type it real quick and
I was going to say, if you type it, you can share your screen.
Or just hold it up?
what I will do.
Or type it in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm on too many of these calls.
Clearly.
Yeah,
Not my first
Yeah,
rodeo.
apparently, right.
This is probably my 4th or 5th of these today, at least.
Okay.
But the most exhilarating of all of them, right, Ms.
Oh,
Sweeney?
yes, definitely.
Can everybody, I want to hold this up. I don't know if everybody, you can't see it. My wife got me this coaster and it says, "Me, this show's boring." Boss replies again, "This is a Zoom conference call, buddy." Pink lemonade, Stanley?
No, it's a pink glass. It when it gets cold, it goes pink.
Oh, okay.
Actually, it's older than Methuselah. I got it from a place in Maui called Cheeseburgers in Paradise.
Oh, okay.
How fun.
And Eddie looks like he's drinking out of a bourbon cup.
No, it's not a bourbon.
This was pink lemonade. My wife made a fresh batch right before the meeting. She knows it's going to be a barn burner, so.
Great vodka.
Uh,
While Catherine's working on that, I asked Eddie before the meeting, all of you are familiar with the old Swifties, and we were told that that was going to be a gas station. And Eddie mentioned to me that that's now a combination laundromat and gas station / store.
okay.
Laundromat?
That's interesting combination.
Yeah.
Feel free to change that, but that kind of covers pretty thoroughly, I think, the intent.
Any reference to the former village of Amelia, and any reference to any plans are included only for the purpose of reference or description. Okay, then.
So would that go at the end of I make a motion, or would that be the preference before you say I make a motion?
I think they said that would be before. It'd be like the preamble.
Okay.
But remember, I don't know whoever makes the motion, you're going to want to include those 3 items that I mentioned as well. Those updates to the A through G. If that makes sense.
Right. So you're completely removing B, the cemeteries, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And then on,
The township plans turns to adopted plans.
right, that's in C.
Yeah.
And then in,
Or I think that might be that. Well, let me confirm that.
That's J on the bottom of C.
That would be under D, the township
D.
adopted.
Okay,
And then the waiver letter goes out of E.
that's out of the E. Okay. All right, let me make a swing at this. I'm going to make a motion, but before I do, I want it in the notes that any reference to the former village of Amelia and any reference to any plans from the former village of Amelia are included only for the purpose of reference or description of particular areas of property. I so make a motion to initiate the application to amend the Pierce Township zoning map and resolution as detailed in the staff report dated June 1, 2021. Further, all non-material edits and cross-references necessary to complete the edits shall be included as it pertains to the below items. A, conditional use permits. B, township business district zoning, automotive body repair, automotive fuel services, automotive sales, automotive service, and auto washing. C, the downtown overlay district with the verbiage change to read adapted plan as discussed at tonight's meeting. The D, brew pubs, we are removing the statement waiver verbiage in that. We will have item E, map amendments, and item F, institutional housing.
And the waiver letter also went the under.
That's what I said, under brew pubs.
Okay, cool.
I stated that we removed that waiver verbiage.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
You know what you're seconding?
That's what you said. I'm trusting you.
Okay. I'm trusting our 2 lawyers.
Okay, we'll take a vote. Mr. Stitt,
Yes.
Ms. Can,
Yes.
Ms. Freed,
Yes.
Mr. Schuler,
Yes.
and Mr. Shadbolt, yes.
Passes.
That's right. Thank you
We
very
got
much.
something accomplished.
Right. Okay, Eddie, oh, he's gone. No, he hasn't. So that's done. Additional business.
I don't have any additional business on my end. I think that, again, next meeting in person should be good.
Yay.
I don't know if everyone has seen the new and improved township meeting room, but we have some screens and some cameras, things like that. So It'll make for a good
Okay.
experience.
Okay.
Eddie, there's a
Yes.
gentleman. Are you going to see if he has any questions he wants to ask?
I think that's a great
Who?
idea. Mr. Werdeman, if you want to unmute yourself and speak.
No.
Oh. Can you hear us, Mr. Werdeman?
Maybe he left us.
No, he's still there, but he has to unmute himself. He did temporarily. There he goes. Mr.
No
Waterman.
questions. No questions.
Okay, thank you.
I did mention to Eddie before the meeting started, I will be out of town for the next meeting, so I will not be there.
Okay. What date is that, Eddie? Do we know?
Here. Is it?
That will be July 4th, 5th, 7th, 6th or 7th.
July
Yeah.
6th, right? The 6th.
Okay. I'll make sure I don't go away till the day after then. Okay. Okay, well, in that case, if there's no more business, I will make the motion to adjourn at 8:03.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and it will be very good to see everybody in person on the 6th of July.
I'll see you in August, folks.
See you, Jeff.
Okay.
Be good. Bye.
Thank you very much, folks. Okay.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.